Hello there and welcome to another edition of Rebels Unveiled. This time we're going to have a look at our first Grand Final, the Series 6 Grand Final, perhaps one of the most famous. This is the final time Firestorm reached the Grand Final in the UK Championship. Tornado became the first robot ever to win the UK Championship while beating the previous winner en route to the title, and in the process Razor became the first UK champion to obtain the runners-up position after being crowned champion. Both feats were repeated in Series 10. Terahertz became the third robot with an overhead weapon to reach a Grand Final. The Sixth War's Grand Final was the only Grand Final where neither of the robots in the final battle were armed with a lifter or flipping weapon, although Razor added a hook on the end of its claw to act as a makeshift lifter. All four Grand Finalists defeated at least one of the previous year's semi-finalists en route to the Grand Final. This had previously occurred in Series 3 and 5. This was the only Grand Final of the original series where the qualifiers from the same semi-final did not fight each other. Razor and Firestorm 4 qualified from the first semi-final but did not meet in this final. Only 4 house robots appeared throughout the whole episode: Shunt in all 4 battles, Sir Killot in the first Eliminator, Mr. Psycho in the second Eliminator, and Dead Metal in the playoff and Grand Final. All 4 teams in this Grand Final competed in the World Championship at one point. This was the final appearance of Dominic Parkinson from Team Hertz. This is the best performance that Terahertz ever got, having reached the Grand Final and coming 4th. However, in the live events, Terahertz would go on to win the UK Championship on a few occasions. Despite popular belief, this is not the first appearance of the anti-Razor frame, as Tornado used this against Razor in the second series of Extreme Warriors, in a separate battle that also caused controversy. This episode would feature the last time Razor and Terahertz would appear in the UK Championship in the classic era. Ironically, the two would appear in Series 8 and face each other in the first round. Though a controversial battle, Ian Lewis considered the Tornado Grand Final battle as one of his all-time favourites, just behind the Millie and Bug fight and above the Drillzilla and Gemini fights. Let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? Team Razor accepted the fact that they'd lost to Tornado. Commenting in 2020, Ian Lewis stated that Tornado would have won regardless due to how badly it pounded Razor into the sidewall. Vincent Blood also acknowledged that the Tornado team won fair and square. Similarly, Andrew Marchant of Team Tornado acknowledged that the frame, despite being larger than the dimensions of the pit, was within the rules, as robots were allowed to be 2 meters in length. To add to this, the frame did not add any extra weight. Andrew Marchant also added that technically Razor could have won had they let Tornado go and backed off, as it was over the pit. However, they did not. Noel Sharkey even had some input, adding that the frame did not break rules, and that Tornado was far more aggressive and damaging as well, as the aforementioned Razor could have just backed off and won argument. However, some teams were against the anti-Razor frames and other such devices. Team Hypnodisc were against the frame and felt it wasn't sporting despite being within the rules. The anti-Razor frame in the end contributed to Series 7's strict weapon rules, forcing the active weapon rule, as well as reducing robot maximum sizes from 2 meters to 1.2 meters. In other words, had Razor and Tornado fought again in Series 7, Tornado was banned from entering with the frame. Firestorm 4 became the third robot in history after Kilotron in Series 2 and Chaos 2 in Series 4 to finish in its position predicted by the seeding, third in Series 6. Tornado is the only robot to have ever beaten all the big 3 from the original run of robots: Chaos 2, Hypnodisc, and now Razor. And that is it for today. The Series 6 Grand Final is one of the most controversial episodes ever thanks to that particular Grand Final battle. Even to this day, you'll see people argue whether or not it was fair or square. It was within the rules, therefore it was fair. And even if you look at the match itself, Razor was almost knocked immobilized against the sidewall at one point. Plus, it's been mentioned a few times, had Razor just backed off, it probably would have won, which would have been interesting had Razor won, because obviously it wouldn't have appeared in Series 7, and it would have been a slicer incident where it would have won and never returned, which is kind of awkward to say at the very least. But yeah, that fight, I know when I was a little kid, I was against Tornado for that. I really hated them for it. Obviously, years later, I really do love this fight. I think it's a great fight. I love Tornado as well. I think it's a great robot. I love Razor as well. I think if I were to rank the two, Razor would be above Tornado, personally speaking. Terahertz reaching the Grand Final was also a lot of fun. Not gonna lie, no matter what, it was going to be Razor and Tornado in that final, because Razor has beaten Firestorm a million times before. There was no way that Terahertz was going to survive Razor. Similarly, Tornado, would have easily beaten Terrace. We see that in Extreme 2, for example, and obviously Tornado beats Firestorm, as we see in the actual grand final itself. But obviously, if Tornado and Razor fall in the first round, then of course, same thing would happen, but Tornado would have won, no matter what, I feel. Similarly, Razor would have won, no matter what. I will say this, the Razor versus Terahertz fight is probably the weakest fight of the... No. The third place playoff was the weakest fight. The Razor versus Terahertz one isn't that bad. It's the third place playoff, which is kind of naff. But everything else is really fun in terms of the battles. Tornado hitting Firestorm is really, really, the way that happens is beautiful. Tornado in Series 6 in general is such a beautifully driven robot. I think it's fantastic. The way it just swerves around and just glides across the arena almost. A very wonderful robot to observe. Razor as well, really good. It's up against much more tough competition. And of course, it still, kicks ass. And of course, Terahertz being fantastic. It's great to see them do well. It's a real shame that they never got to like a grand final position or a higher position afterwards. It's a shame they withdrew in Series 7, but of course they barely brought a robot in, which is a real big shame. All things considered, they really should have, either entered like the previous entry or I don't know. I'm just muttering words by this point. I would have loved to have seen Terahertz in Series 7. It sucks that they didn't appear. It's a real shame in general that Series 7 had so many All-Stars just not appear. It really sucks. But I digress. We're talking about the Series 6 Grand Final. I think it's a great Grand Final. There is a bit of like weakness towards the third place playoff. I'm also, the way they did the award ceremony, I miss it when it was like in series 3 and 4. That in particular was my favorite era for the award ceremonies, where they'd have like clips of the robots. They'd have the trophy and they'd say, well, why this robot is nominated and why this robot wins. They kind of brush it off in this grand final, which isn't great. I like to see the awards be treated with much more respect, and of course by Series 7 and the reboot, it basically gets forgotten about, save for some behind the scenes stuff. But yes, as for a grand final, this is a fantastic grand final. Is it controversial? Yes, it is. Will there be splits between Razor or Tornado deserving win? Of course there will be. There will always be that. But it doesn't change the fact that this is such a great and fun grand final, and such a brilliant one as well. 4 of the best machines at the time in one episode. What else can I say? It's great. So let's have a look at what we'll get next time around. On to one of my all-time favourite episodes. It's the Extreme 2 Annihilator. I absolutely love the Annihilator. It's one of our first Annihilators, in fact, discussing. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll see you next time around.